Hi guys, welcome to Feedback Friday. This is part of the Artist Strong community. You could be watching this live on the Facebook page, which is Becoming Artist Strong, or you could be watching the replay of this on YouTube. Either way, you are most welcome here. I help artists like you build your skill and develop your unique artist voice. And in Feedback Friday, it's an opportunity for artists to ask for feedback and input on the way that they organize their website, formatting, branding, how they lay out their copy, the language that they use on their website. It could be, I have a work in progress and I'd like feedback on it, all kinds of things. Hey Tia, thanks for watching today and being with me. So this is an opportunity for you to either get live actionable feedback on your work or to take lessons from the other people who have offered their art to bravely to share online in front of a large community to get feedback and be an example of how feedback can be constructive and useful and positive rather than that negative association that we can have with the word criticism. Hey, Carmen. So I have two different things that we're going to talk about today. One, we have an artist, Tia, has shared a work in progress and is talking about colors and study. And then the other thing we're going to do is someone's shared with me a portfolio of their art, and we're actually going to look through that work. And she's interested in understanding her voice and better figuring out how to approach finding her style. So we're going to look at a group of her artworks and give her some ideas and strategies to help her group the works, but also further her own research. And when I say the word research, I mean artistic investigation. I mean making your art. For me, art is an act of research. It's a way to help us come to conclusions about ideas that we have or test out different theory hypotheses that we might have about, a skill set that we have or an idea that we want to share. So I think that covers all of that. So I'm going to switch my screen to screen share so that we can get started. Now, let me get Tia's up here and kind of blocking the screen a little bit. And then we've got kind of her comment here for a conversation starter. So she's got a study that she's done on the right to help her understand kind of what she's going to do in her final work on the left here that she's been working on. She's been doing a lot of research on watercolor and figuring out how to use watercolor to paint skin, fabrics, and shadows. She's been doing all this research. She's been studying different colors. She's been using the wonderful online resource called Wet Canvas, which is an online forum that I highly recommend, which can be a wonderful way to get answers to common questions artists have about color theory, about products, whatever, you name it, it's there. So she is still interested and concerned about primarily hair color and tone, or what to do with the hair. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then I didn't see, she said there were a few other questions. Tia, pop on and share the other questions you might have. I didn't really see, I saw the hair question, and I'll give just a general read on the work as well. So let's get this a little bigger here. Okay, here we go. Well, it's a little big. There we go. You guys should be able to see, I think, most of her work here. So something we've known about Tia's work, if you've watched any of these other Feedback Fridays, Tia has been very generous in sharing her art with all of us. She has this signature style of having and creating borders and having part of a dress or some kind of, like in this case, a dress or other objects kind of come around the edge of what seems to be the frame of the artwork. And I really like this. I think it's a signature part of her style from all the work we've seen. And how nice that, no matter what she's drawing, before we saw work of jellyfish, now we have a portrait, there's still continuity. And that's part of voice or style. So that's something all of you can be thinking about. Style doesn't mean you have to only draw people or paint jellyfish or seascapes. Style is about artistic decisions you make that are shared across all of your artwork. And sometimes that's really hard to see, especially on your own work. And that's one reason feedback is so important. Tia said that she's updated the framing and made it more symmetrical, and she's wondering how that frame works. Okay. So that's something for you guys to think about too, is what conscious decisions do you make in your art that seem to be in all of your artwork and maybe not everyone else does. That's part of finding that unique you. for her hair color, right now it's very cool and it's matching the tone and the study of the ground, right? So that's something we want to see in a painting is typically you want some harmony. You want colors that you use in one part of your painting to be integrated in other parts of your image. And that's one way to create this feeling of unity in an artwork. And it also helps a work feel kind of finished. So something I think might be interesting is what if she put, I mean, these are just a few ideas. I could see some of that red being a hinted highlight in the hair. I also think it'd be really nice to see greater value in the hair. So for example, we see that there's a very clear light source that's coming from here. I'm drawing with my fingers today, so bear with me. So that means that everything under here would be super dark because this is all covering it. So right now we have two shades, right? We've got, and this is a study, so that doesn't mean she'd have all of this perfected. This is something I'd have her think about in her finished work, is I think this whole area should be super dark. And I think that would really help create even further dimension because she's got some rich values in the dress and the folds that really look nice. But also thinking about how strong this shadow is here, right? And the light and where it's coming from. I actually wonder if this shadow should be angled this way. If the sun's coming this way, some of that shadow might also be coming this way as well. You could have two shadows and you could have one moving horizontally, but I'm not sure that that shadow is accurate. It might be interesting to test some light sources because if the shadow's that, then that would mean the light source is coming directly this way. So, and this light highlight here suggests that the light's coming this way. So that's something for her to think about. But also, if the light is coming from this angle, not only would the hair be darker here, this side of the arm would be a lot darker, this part of the dress, and definitely in between this area would be super dark. So she could have some of these really dark values in there, and that would add some real dimension to the work. I love the position of the figure. The movement of the hair looks really nice. I really think her studying this work and testing colors and playing with it has been really smart. So yeah, I don't know it's necessarily that the hair color, that something is wrong per se with the color. I do think the values need to be strengthened in some areas. And I do think it could be fun to play with different colors. So she could test a few different color schemes to see if she prefers a different hair color over the other. The color brown or gray that she's using, kind of a mix, it is a lot cooler than, and part of me wonders if she used more something like a burnt sienna that has a little bit of that reddish orangish color in it, what that would look like and how that would work with the color of the red in the dress. I'm not sure that those colors would harmonize perfectly, so I think that's something she needs to test. But I am curious about a brown that's maybe more reddish and how that would interplay with the rest of the composition. I don't know. She said too, as I mentioned earlier in the comments, that she's updated the framing and made it more symmetrical. So I believe that means the figure is a little more central. I don't know that that's necessarily good or bad. I think because there's such an asymmetrical position of the figure, I think centering it's not necessarily a bad thing because there's so much movement with her that I could see that working either way. So Tia, go with your gut on that. I want to note as well, though, in her drawing on the left, I have to say I love the feet and shoes and the line quality of them and just how that ankle fits into the foot. I think this whole section is beautifully drawn, and please don't do anything else with that except maybe fiddle with the shadow, as I mentioned, depending on where you say your light source is coming from. I'm going to take a sip of water here. Yeah, I think honestly for me, because there is a feeling of a strong light source in the image, I really want some of that light source to be emphasized in the figure. And even just darkening that one part of the hair, I think could add a lot of dimension to the work. Let's see if I can take a sample color and kind of fill it in. You're welcome, Tia. So just somewhere in there. And again, I'm using Photoshop and my pudgy little fingers to draw right now. So obviously Tia has some great quality of line and marks, and there's a softness to the work. And I hope she maintains that. I think that's a strength in this piece. Tia says, I do have a reference photo from Pexels, and the hair is different in the photo. Well, good. And that's part of the point too, right? Is if you guys use a reference photo, use it to your benefit, but then also change it as you want it to be changed. The whole point is to be able to make the art you imagine and wish to create. And a lot of people have this idea that you have to be able to draw from your imagination, and if you can't, you're not a real artist, or all kinds of different definitions. But almost all the people I know use photo reference or models to help them figure out things, especially with the figure. So why not have a photo reference for the position of the arms and legs and the body, and then, you know, play with hair and have your own interpretation of that. That's part of how you make it your own art too. So thank you, Tia. I think that's a great thing that you're doing. Oh, I feel like I am racing. I'm short of breath today. Okay, so that being done, thank you, Tia, again. I am going to share our portfolio now. So this is like 20-something artworks by a lovely woman I've had a chat with. I was very fortunate to be able to speak with in person, named Pam. And she's really curious about how to find her voice and like what she's, you know, what is she doing right? What could she be thinking about for her study or future practice to help her grow? So I'm not going to be able to see your comments very easily with this up, but I'll pop on and see if you guys have comments. And of course, if you guys watch this replay, I'd love for you to comment and add your own 2 cents and share. You can see here when I'm offering feedback, or at least I'm trying to say that there's no black and white answer about what's right or wrong. I'm trying to give artists a different idea or perspective to help them make choices that feel aligned with what they want with their artwork. And you can be more confident in your decisions as an artist if you have that kind of feedback, because then you have someone holding a mirror to you going, well, do you like this? Well, what about this? What about changing, you know, hair color or the direction of your light source? And then it makes you go, oh, I didn't think about that. And so then you can make sure it's a conscious decision in your art to have something the way it is. Often when we're creating, it's very intuitive and we're not really consciously thinking about the choices we make. We just kind of put our art on the paper or the canvas or whatever medium you work with. And feedback and critique is an important part of that process, because it's a point for you to get out of the making mode and get you into a reflection mode that helps you see what you've been making, what kind of messages or stories come up in your art, so that you can then continue forward with any art you make and be conscious in theme or technique or other decisions, because you've taken that time to reflect and go, oh, I like this. Oh, I don't like this. So feedback is super important, and I hope that these videos give you some confidence to ask for feedback and create boundaries too, because some people just think, oh, I get to say I like it or I don't, or if it's good or it's bad, and that's not feedback. That's them sharing their opinion. That's not critique. Critique is talking about the elements and principles of art and how you make artistic decisions to create meaning or tell story. So I'm going to first kind of scroll through all the artwork that Pam shared here so that we can get a sense of her work and her style. And then we'll kind of go into a little more detail. So the first reaction I have is I see a lot of nature connection here. Lots of flowers and animals, kind of landscapes going on. It looks like she often works in watercolor. We've got some images sideways. Sorry, guys. I think I was lazy today about orienting all the pictures before we started. But you can still get a sense of what's going on here. Still lifes, some building spaces, but even, yeah, a lot of nature. I feel a lot of connection to nature. So I'm going to scroll to the top now real quick. So the first thing I want to share is, if you look at this group of work, I already see 3 different themes. So if you were going to present your work publicly and you had this kind of portfolio, I would group the work in different categories. So one, she's got some beautiful watercolors. I love this flower in the center here. I think this is a beautiful painting. So I might group all of my flowers together as a group of artworks in a series that could tell stories. I don't know too, I think she's often working from life. And if these are, you know, flowers from where she lives, that could be part of the storytelling. Or if there's symbolic meaning to these flowers, that could be part of the story too. So I think that's one connection between the work, in addition to her use of watercolor. Then she also has all these still lifes and kind of object studies. So I think those could go well together too, including her axe and peacock feathers. I think they all have kind of this idea of study and focus. I think this blue dish is beautifully done. Another beautiful example of watercolor. And that could just be a group of works that shows study or focus. And there's a very long history of artists working with still lifes to communicate story, and also has quite a lot of symbolism involved. So that could be a whole group of works. And then lastly, she has some landscapes. I think that her animals, she could choose, she's got 2 animal portraits here. She could continue with a series of animals, or I think they could fit into the landscape works, especially since some of the landscapes for me, even though they're architectural, I still think of them as a landscape, like this beautiful room with the multiple doors opening to the green. I think that's a lovely composition. So here you can see Pam has skill. She has a pretty strong use of watercolor as a medium, and she seems to, I get the impression, observe the world around her. So that's already an overarching focus of her work. Is sometimes we don't know what to paint or draw, so we just draw the things around us. But then the things that we choose to draw that are around us and in our environment, that actually starts to reflect our personality and the things we do and our choices as well as artists. And so that's something I want Pam to think about, is if she's actively studying her environment, well then, what else about your environment would you be interested to show? You know, is it really, do you really want to focus on the beauty of the landscape around you and showing a part of maybe your world that people don't understand or don't even know about? It could be a tool. So for example, I know that Pam's from Zimbabwe and I've never been there, but I have the impression that it's a very beautiful landscape and environment, or it can be. And so if that's part of where she's coming from, well then she could fully embrace that in the next group of artworks she studied, is how can I show the beauty of the environment that I live in? And that's a unique perspective and take to share with people. So I'm sharing this because I want you guys to see that finding voice is these little steps. Here she has all this work. For me, I think it's clear the same artist is making them because she has similar application of paint, the way that she chooses subject matter. All of these things have shared similarities. But what happens is when we actively start trying to develop our voice, we start with the things we naturally do, and then we try to push them a little further. So if she knows she loves flowers, like this green one too on the left here, I love this flower as well. The way that she manages white in watercolor is absolutely beautiful. I love how she's using white. So that could even be a focus, is a study of flowers or objects where the white of the paper is left exposed, and the layering that comes with that. You know, focus on beauty of landscape. So you can see here, even in the discussion I'm having, you could make a technical choice, like focusing on the whites of her flowers and incorporating white into her paintings as a focal point and a way to investigate things. And that could be a tying point for a group of artworks. Or she could be looking at the beauty of the world and environment around her and really be focused on that and trying to tell the story of the beauty she sees in her everyday life. Those are completely different stories, but they still would even work together, because ultimately our voice is always changing, and we can see that evolution when we work in a series. So that's part of what I'm communicating here, is I hope you guys would look at the work you have in a group, see what kind of tying threads the different pieces have and how you might group them together if you were going to have a show of your work. And then ask yourself, which grouping interests me the most, or which grouping gives me new ideas and gets me excited. And then say, okay, that idea is really interesting. I want to investigate it more. So I'm going to create a series of 6 to 8 artworks that further investigate this specific idea. And then jump and dig in, run down that rabbit hole, whatever you want to say. That is the work that will help you create a cohesive body of art and make your voice more consistently obvious to your audience. And that's important for a few reasons. One, if you're looking to find voice, you need to have a conscious strategy to develop your voice. It doesn't just always appear. Some people naturally seem to have a unique style, but someone tells them, oh, that's really unique, or they get feedback or reinforcement from their environment that makes them continue to make those choices. So some people don't like to hear other people's feedback because they say then it influences their decisions. But I would argue that the only work, all art that we make is influenced by the environment and the people around us. And whether or not people give us actual feedback or we imagine the feedback people might give us, all of that impacts our decisions as artists. I'm going to take a minute and just see if you guys have had any comments. Okay. So let me see if I can summarize this real quick before we wrap up today. So if you have a portfolio of work, here's what I'd suggest you do. I'd have you look at your work in thumbnails, just like I have them up on the screen here with Pam. In fact, if you have a printer, I'd print them out like this. And I'd try to have them oriented all correctly, unlike Carrie here. And I would ask myself, which ones relate? Which ones seem connected? And it can be and they can be connected in two different ways. It could be artistic decision making. So, for example, it could be compositional choices, the arrangement of the objects on the surface. It could be, as I talked about, the white being exposed in these watercolors and how the white shows through for these flowers. It could be application of paint or the specific medium you use. Those are all technical ways that your work could tie. And then you also have thematic. So, architectural environments could be a theme, or landscapes. It could be flowers. It could be animals or nature overall. So look at your work and go, okay, what kind of idea-based relationships do I see in the work that I have? And then also technical. And then ask yourself to think about those categories a little deeper and really ask yourself, what's more interesting to me? Which path could I go down next? Because once you understand that, you can even then share this work, say if you do want it for exhibition or for purchase, you want someone to invest in your art, then that reflection helps you create storytelling to share on Instagram, to share on Facebook, to share to your email list, to tell them about the work and help you better articulate your ideas behind the work and why you make the decisions you make, which connects people to you and your art. And ultimately, for shows and for selling, people want to know the artist and they want to feel like they're part of the creative process. So sharing that journey builds trust, so that people who might not even know you in person might be willing to invest in your art online, for example. So I would love for you guys to take some action steps today. So I'm going to get off the screen here and I'm going to put me back up on. Okay, hey. So for all of you looking to find your voice today, I would love you to do that little bit of homework I just shared about printing out your artwork in thumbnails, kind of looking at it all and looking at either the technique-based decisions that you make that connect the work or the thematic. And I'd like you in the comments to share just kind of a quick blurb about the connections you're making in your art that maybe you didn't quite see before. That is part of finding your voice. And if finding your voice is important to you, I want to make sure you know about my program called The Circle. The Circle is a 6-month mastermind for artists. If you haven't heard of the word mastermind, it's a special community of artists who are working together towards shared goals. They don't have the same goal, but they're all working towards something, and they want other people who get it, who are doing the same thing, working towards goals that matter to them, because when you're around people who inspire you and who also are seeking to achieve, everyone levels up. Everyone is stronger when we surround ourselves with people who hold us to a higher bar. And that's why the word mastermind is used, because everyone's trying to work towards a mastery of sorts, and everyone doing that helps each other lift up and raise their level and bar and achieve more. So that's why I created The Circles. I want artists to have that opportunity to get feedback like I offer in Feedback Friday from other peers as well as myself, to make conscious decisions in their art and to help them find their voice. There's several workshops inside the program. There's all kinds of workshops that are in a private membership website. But honestly, I think the meat of the program and the reward that people get from it is from the relationships they develop with the other people who join the program. People make real friendships inside the circle, and the achievement that people make, the strides they make because of the shift in their confidence is so inspiring. So if you've been thinking about wanting a community like that, if you live in a rural environment or you don't have an arts community locally that gives you that kind of feedback or support, I think the circle might be right for you. Make sure you check out the program, and there is a special offer right now. If you sign up before December 16th, you will get a copy of Podcasts While Painting, which is a special bonus that's a curated podcast listening list. So it's like a whole bunch of radio shows listed, and I've curated them to match the content inside the circle, as well as the ideas and conversations we have that are an overarching part of the program. And I love listening to podcasts while I make my art, because that's ultimately the point of the circle too, is I want you to be making your art regularly. So you show up, you make your art regularly, you get feedback on it, you figure out what that voice is, so that you can then set any goal you want for your art and begin to realize it and have the confidence to actually make those goals happen. Circle Gold even goes further and starts to talk about community building and exhibiting or applying to grants, things like that. So if you're interested, go ahead, check the link that I'll have below this video once the live is finished. And if you have any questions, email me, Carrie@artiststrong.com. I really want to make sure the right people join this program. If you're in the right mindset, if you have those kinds of goals or hopes for your work, you will get results inside the program. That being said, too, we have, I think, 1 or 2 more Feedback Fridays before this year's season of this show wraps up. So if you'd like to be in a future Feedback Friday, email me your artwork or the links to your art at Carrie@artiststrong.com, and I will be sure to talk about your work too. Thank you guys for being part of this community, for trusting me with your art, and for all of you, Tia, Pam, Carmen, everyone in the past who has offered and shared their work, for being brave and being an example to others, for putting your work out there and getting that feedback. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys soon.